Senpai, it's your Kohai, and I'm back with another in-depth review. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the only safe work figures from one of my favorite artists, Rurudo, and her character, Eve. There's also an entire lore behind Rurudo's characters, which I didn't even know existed until I started researching for this video, which of course I'll share. If you follow our channel, you may have noticed that we haven't been doing any 18+ reviews, which is our favorite thing to do. Google demonetized this channel, so we couldn't be our degenerate selves for 90 days, and in order to reapply, we had to delete all of our 18+ content. Now that the 90 days is up, we've reapplied, and once we get remonetized, we will immediately rebel and create a new and separate channel dedicated to 18+ figures called Kohai's Curiosities. Now that we've deleted all of our 18+ content from this channel, we will re-upload all of it onto our separate channel and even take this time to remaster some of our older content. Once we finish uploading our old content, we can focus on creating new 18+ content, such as Toa from Slow Damage, manufactured by Native, and our first review from the notoriously awful company, Insight, with the Pink Succubus by Blade, which is another one of my favorite artists. So if you like our 18+ reviews, please go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our content. If we're not uploading a video on this channel, chances are we're uploading a not safe for video on the other. Back to Rurudo, she is an artist turned VTuber, which you can see her lion persona up on screen. As for her character Eve, she's in most of Rurudo's drawings, and we can see her on the cover of the first art book, Nostalgia, that was published in 2018. According to Pixiv, Rurudo named her Eve after Adam and Eve, as she is the first woman and the first character that she drew. Eve is an original character, but she's actually also in a light novel series named Carneades, which has 3 volumes. I currently have 2. The first one has a picture of Elle, the second one has a picture of Eve, and the third one has a picture of Noah. There's also a manga adaptation currently coming out, but only the first chapter is translated into English, and while the characters are based off of illustrations by Rurudo, they're not actually drawn by her in the manga. Imagine a world in which your mother tells you that you have to dress provocatively just because you're a demon. This is the world in which Eve, a very timid demon who doesn't want to hurt anybody, is a notorious escapee, and Elle, a very hardworking and serious angel cop, is sent to capture her. When she goes to arrest her, some monsters end up appearing, and they have to fight together in order to defeat them. Eventually, they end up teaming up to uncover a mystery through the book series. There are 5 races that live together in the land, but there is a lot of unrest. The rulers are the angels, and they're allied with the vampires. The antagonists are the demons. The beast folk are servants, and the humans are impoverished. Almost all of Rurudo's characters are in this story, and I had no idea, so I found it really interesting that there was an actual story to these characters, and it gives them a lot more depth, as I just collected them because I thought the art was pretty. Without further ado, this is Eve, the handcuff version, manufactured by AniGift, not to be confused with AniGame or AniMester. She's a 1/6 scale with an MSRP of 21,780 yen. Taking a look at the box, we have a clear plastic box, which I do like better than cardboard boxes. In a hobby where you're pre-ordering pretty much based off of prototype photos, it is nice to actually be able to see the product potentially before buying if you're lucky enough to have this in store. And they did do a good job with the detailing to make sure you can actually see the whole figure. We have this nice gothic border here with some crosses, a graveyard, and a church. On the side, we have a prototype photo. The back is a replica of the front, and then on the other side, we have a picture of the artwork. Here's the first layer of inner packaging. Something I forgot to mention earlier is that you could remove all of this and potentially display her in the box, which some people like to do since it does look good. Just make sure you air it out from time to time so the off gases don't build up and potentially harm the figure. Dimensions-wise, this figure does come with 2 separate bases, and so the heights will differ, but I don't even know why you would want to use the big, ugly one when you have this nice, small, pretty one here. Nice, small, pretty one here. And she is very stable, so I'm going to give you the dimensions of the smaller, nicer one, which is 10 and 5/16 inches tall, or a tad above 26 centimeters. Initial impressions, the Chinese have done it again. We have a very stunning figure. They did a great job on one of her most iconic features, which is her hair. There's lots of shading. The finish could have been a little more refined, and they did take a few creative liberties, such as creatively making her ass thicker. But I will talk about that in the artistry section. Before we take a closer look, I want to address one thing. Apparently, the use of this pen is very controversial and gives some of you guys a lot of anxiety. But it's such a good implement. It's pointy, so I can point out details. It's made of 14 karat gold, and so it's soft. See? You can hear it, but it's not doing anything. I can literally do more accidental damage with my fingernail, or more likely just from handling the figure for this review. And I also trusted around my Rurudo figure, so that's saying something, but I hear you. Taking a closer look, starting with the paint.
Bubs, you can't use a knife.
Why not? I need something pointy. So taking a closer look, but it's smaller. Why does everyone only comment about my pen and not yours? Yours is more noticeable. I would have used something pretty too.
I don't know. I guess you're just more animated, so it just makes people more nervous.
But that's discrimination. So taking a closer but it's so ugly. Taking a closer look at the paint, starting with the hair, this is easily one of my favorite aspects about this figure. It looks really stunning, and they did a really good job of adding a lot of depth. To preface this, almost the entire figure has a pearlescent sheen to it, and it actually makes it very difficult to tell exactly how they did the shading because of how it refracts the light. Just so you guys are aware, there's a couple different ways you can do pearlescent paint. The pearlescent factor typically comes from a reflective mica powder, and you can either mix that with a base paint, making it reflective, or you can mix it with a clear coat and then apply it over a standard paint, making it look reflective. And then sometimes they also add another clear coat on top of that. Because of how even the finish is, and we do see this reflective overspray, I do think they've gone with that second option, which is the pearlescent clear coat applied over the standard paint, and I also don't think that they've added another clear coat, as we do see this reflective overspray. Typically in figures, option 2 is more common, since it's a lot cheaper, especially when you have multiple different colors, as you can make all of them look reflective with just one clear coat. As far as I can tell, the base color is this pink that you see on the tips of her pigtails here, as well as on the ends that are over the wings. Then they've gone in with this lilac airbrushing and done deeper strokes in her bangs here, where her pigtails are pulled at the top, and then on the parting of her hair down the middle. All of this mixes with the pearlescent clear coat to really make a stunning hairpiece. And in my opinion, it's one of the best hairpieces in my entire collection. I think they've really been able to capture Rurudo's art style. It's pastel, but it still has a lot of depth, which is impressive considering how light the color is. For the hair accessories, we have a pinkish purple plastic with black airbrushing on the inside. For the face, the eye decals are set nicely, and they did a good job of recreating Rurudo's brushstrokes in her eyelashes. For the lips, we do have them outlined on the inside, and then the bottom lip has gloss to accentuate them more. For the alternate face, the eye decals are again set nicely, and they actually added blush to this one, so I'm not really sure why they didn't add it to the first one, considering that the artwork does have blush. Here they've given her a more sheepish smile, and we have a line separating the top and bottom lip again, with lip gloss on the bottom. As the plastic starts to thin on the ears, it does have a pink color. For the bodysuit on the front, it doesn't seem like there's any shading, and it's just made from the shadows of the modeling. We do have the nice pearlescent finish on the majority of the bodysuit. For the harness and her choker, all of the metal detailings are clean. Moving to the back, for the frills, it does seem like there could be some shading on both the frills and in the middle, or it could just be where the pearlescent coat ends, and you can see the base coat. Either way, it does seem very intentional. For the back, her metal detailings are clean because they're added back in. We can also see that her collar and her garter are a glossy paint instead of the pearlescent. Flipping around to the front, the wing detailings are a clear plastic, and we do see shading on the bow here, as well as on the top of the stockings, where the metal clasp meets them. The metal clasp also does look clean, and is painted with a metallic paint. The rest of the stockings have the nice pearlescent finish, making them look very sheer. And then we also have shading on the tops of the shoes, as well as all along where the stockings go into them. The wings are identical, and we can see that it's a purple translucent plastic with black airbrushing. The lace print is on this side, and it does look good, but if I had to criticize, there are a few areas where it doesn't quite go all the way to the edges, but I really am just nitpicking here. If we move to the front, we can see, unfortunately, we do have a little bit of paint transfer from the wing onto the hair, so do be careful about that. For the handcuffs, we have a base metallic silver, and then they've actually done a dark wash and to get in all of the little crevices. And because a dark wash is inherently messy and uneven, it gives them a very rugged look, making them look as convincing as they can for plastic instead of using metal. For the skin, the finish is very inconsistent, and it's also very difficult to tell whether they added shading or not. There are areas that look very soft, and there are other areas that look very plasticky, such as where her crotches we see this pink color, and it's difficult to tell whether that's just the color of the plastic or if they did add airbrushing. We also see this pink color on the inside of her hands, around her chest here, where her thighs meet her stockings, as well as where the garter cuts into her butt cheeks here. From the back, we can see that they did paint her fingernails a peachy color. Moving on to modeling, the hair is once again extremely impressive. For being so elaborate, there are very few pieces added back in. We can obviously tell that the bangs are a separate piece. For the right pigtail, it's actually 3 pieces, but each of these pieces is one long strand. For the left pigtail, there are 2 pieces that are long strands, and it does have a smaller piece added back in the front. They did a good job of adding a decent amount of detailing in her bangs, where her pigtails are pulled, and the part of her hair. We do start to lose a little bit of that detail as we get into the strands, but for such an elaborate piece, I do think it's an adequate amount of detailing. We do have these weird indentions, particularly on this hair piece here, on the top where it lays over the wing. Because this piece is glued to the wing, it looks like it could be from a machine or maybe someone's fingernail, as it doesn't look natural. Overall, for the finish, I don't see any part lines flashing, and there's only one small area of paint clumping on the back. For the face, her mouth is modeled slightly, with a recessed area for the graphic of the inside of her mouth. The bottom lip is more pronounced, and along with the paint, it looks very plump. For the alternate face, her mouth is more drawn, but it is slightly modeled, and we can see here that they did model the details of her ears, as well as gave her pointy ears because she is a demon. Moving on to the bodysuit, it does look tight and thin, and the paint definitely enhances this effect. They did a good job of modeling her ribcage, her obliques, and her abs to give this area a lot of shadow and depth. They also modeled in her little belly button. We can definitely tell where this harness piece was added back in because you can see where it meets the rest of the bodysuit on the bottom, as well as on the side. All the bows do have an appropriate amount of detailing for this size. The middle class do look good, and they've also added wrinkles where the middle class are pulling up on the stockings. They've added wrinkles also in the bodysuit, at the bottom, as well as on the sides. For the rest of the body sculpt, her hip bones are very pronounced, and they've given her a more plump labia majora, as well as a wider thigh gap. You can tell where the garter is added back in as it cuts into the skin, but her thighs are appropriately thick. Taking a look at the back, we can see that they modeled her fingers fairly well, but there are a few that still look like they're glued together. We can definitely tell where this piece was added back in, as there are small gaps where the skin meets the frills. They did add a decent amount of frills in the top of her bodysuit. We can also see where the garter meets the bodysuit here. And then they did add some wrinkles on the bottom of her bodysuit where it goes between her butt cheeks, where it would naturally pull up. Speaking of her butt, we definitely have 2 round cakes here, and then we can see where the lines of her garter cut into them. Looking at the wings, while they are very simple, they were able to model the structure of the wing very well, and able to do it in one piece so there are no seam lines. The webbing of the wings is a modeled plastic with a print on the back. I do think it would have been cool if they were able to use real fabric lace, but I do understand why they couldn't do that, as it would have been more expensive and more complicated. Moving down, we can see that they modeled the back of her knees as well as her ankles, and they did add the appropriate wrinkles. And lastly, taking a look at the handcuffs, they are modeled plastic, so it would have been nice if they were real metal, but it would have been more expensive and we wouldn't have had this nice model kink here, which does add some movement. As for the details, I did pay attention to the little things. We have the chain links here, we have the keyhole cross here, we have the rivet at the bottom, and the ratchet mechanism for the cuff. What's even cooler is that the rivet is functional, and so you can open the cuffs on both sides, so you too can arrest your own Eve for the crime of being too cute. Fitment-wise, this figure is very easy to assemble, as the only pieces that are removable are her hair piece to change the face, the handcuffs, and the base. So the only gaps that we see are from pieces added back in, but unfortunately you do have to worry about paint transfer. As we showed you earlier in the video, she does come with 2 bases. Currently, we have her on the smaller base that has a faceted edge, like you would see on a gemstone. We do have plastic pegs, so that is unfortunate, because obviously it would have been better and more stable over time if we had metal ones. I don't even know why they bothered including the second base. Some people might argue that it's wider and so it's more stable, but as you can see here, this base is very stable. They also literally gave us no incentive to use it. It could have been a different color, such as a translucent pink, some kind of graphic design element, Rurudo signature, literally anything. Currently, it's just a waste of plastic, box space, and shipping cost. Give me my 20 yen back, I don't want it, or hell, I'll pay you 20 yen just to keep it, so I don't feel like I'm killing the earth. For artistry, I do think they did an exceptional job of recreating Rurudo's artwork, and that the figure really brings it to life. I do wish that I had the art book to show you guys, but unfortunately it is one of the 3 that I don't own. One day I will own them all. But here I do have the AmiAmi pre-order bonus poster for reference. They did a really good job of recreating her hair, with the sole exception of this one piece that drapes over her hand. It looks a little odd, as it's supposed to be one long strand that flows all the way down and drapes over her wing. But they did add all of the highlights in her hair from where the light hits it in the artwork, so I do still think it's one of the best things about this figure. The kink in the handcuffs does look good, and they even enhance some of the details, such as the wrinkles in her bodysuit and tights, as well as the sculpt of her stomach. They did change a few things, such as this face does not have any blush, and it does change the tonality for me, as in the figure she looks more listless, and in the artwork more coy. The lace on the wings in the artwork does have more flowers than the one in the figure, and then we get to some more of the drastic changes, where they gave her a more puffy labia majora and a more exaggerated thigh gap. Another difference is that the right wing looks like it should be a little steeper so that the tip comes in front of her hair and wraps around her stomach, which gives the wings a more unique twist in the artwork than we see in the figure. And if we turn her around, she is double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon, hella ass, and the sun's still out. If you look up on screen, you can see a different artwork of Eve from an angle we can actually see her butt from, and she is supposed to be a more slender character. So while this makes for a more voluptuous figure, I personally appreciate the artist representation of a more slim figure. We don't often see this body type in adult characters, and Rurudo is known for her more petite body styles, and is personally what draws me to her artwork. As I said earlier, I do think they did a good job of recreating Rurudo's eyes, and the mouth is modeled well. But I do wish they would have added blush so that it matched the artwork, especially considering that they added blush for this face, and so she has more of an embarrassed smile. The pose is constrained by the artwork, but I do think it translates to a figure well. She's leaning to the side, her wings are wrapped around her, although a little bit less so than in the artwork, but I do think it gives her dimension. In the artwork, she is leaning more backwards, so I do wish they would have recreated that angle to give her more of a floating effect. Luckily, we do have a lot of movement in the hair and the handcuff, but overall, it does still feel a little static. For Moe, I do think Eve is extremely cute. I really like how you can handcuff her, the pastel color palettes, the outfit is really erotic. The sculptor tried to put their spin on what they thought would make the figure look more sexy, but for me it detracts from the artist's vision, and I personally would have been more enticed by the petite body style, as I think it's really essential to Rurudo's artwork and what really draws me in. But with that, let's give her a score. Starting with the box, it is one of the open window clear boxes, which puts it above the average cardboard box for me. And I do think the graphic design is subtle, but looks good, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Moving on to production, starting with the paint. The layers in the hair and the pearlescent paint used throughout the figure look phenomenal. There is a decent amount of shading. They did a dark wash, and the line work is clean, although some of this is due to the pieces being added back in. But the finish on the skin is very inconsistent. The print of the wings doesn't quite go to the edge, and it's inherently hindered by the lack of elements overall in comparison to something like our Azure Lane figures, so it gets a 12 out of 15. For modeling, the finish is excellent with no part lines or flashing, the handcuffs are functional, the body sculpt is very good, and there's not a lot of room for error in fitment since most everything is already assembled, although this does increase the risk for paint transfer. But there are quite a few gaps from pieces being added back in. There are lines from the manufacturing process on the hair over the wings, but beyond this, there's not much more than what I would expect from an average figure, so it gets a 12 out of 15. For the base, it's difficult to rate because on one hand you get 2 of them, but on the other hand, one is a complete waste. The base we chose to display her on only looks good in comparison to the other, and in reality, there's nothing exceptional about it. It's a solid color, there's no graphic design, but there is a little bit of geometry and it is small. If this base had a metal peg, it would be average at best, but it doesn't. We also need to factor in the other base that would normally get a score of 1, so collectively we'll give them a score of 3 out of 10. Moving on to artistry under 2D versus 3D, while this figure does capture the essence of Rurudo's artwork, and I do feel like it's come to life, as we look closer, there are quite a few differences. The face that matters to me has no blush, as I like to match the figure with the artwork. The wings aren't wrapped around as much. They've exaggerated her thigh gap and butt, which is not true to Rurudo's design, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. For a pose, it is constrained by the artwork, and while it translates to the figure decently well, it is static overall. I do wish they would have recreated the steeper angle, but luckily we do get a lot of movement with the hair and handcuffs, so I'm going to give it a slightly above average score of a 6 out of 10. For the face, I do think they did a good job of capturing Rurudo's art style, and they modeled the mouths well, giving the lips gloss to accentuate them, but the face that matches the artwork has no blush, which is very important to me, so it gets an 8 out of 10. For Moe, while I do think this figure is very cute and I really like Rurudo's characters, it doesn't pull on my heartstrings like I want it to, and what is egregious for me is that she is over-sexualized and not true to the artist's petite body styles, which is essential to her character design, so it gets a 6 out of 10. Moving on to value, objectively this figure costs 21,780 yen and weighs 253 grams, giving it a yen per gram of 86.09, which is a 1 out of 5. Subjectively, the Rurudo tax is real, which is interesting because typically original characters are cheaper, so comparing it to other modern-day Rurudo figures, it's pretty standard, especially when you consider the aftermarket price, and that you get an alternate face, so it gets a 3 out of 5. For playability and displayability, you do get an alternate face and an alternate base if that matters to you. The main base we're using does take up a small footprint, and you're really just constrained by her wings, so it gets a 4 out of 5. This brings the total for the Eve handcuff version to a 66 out of 100. This brings the Eve handcuff version into 16th place, right above the Bountiful Year, Stella and Yuri, and right below the Miku Chinese New Year. If we instead sort by only production and artistry, it jumps up to 12th place, right above the Succubus Lumu, and right below the Kurumi Japanese doll. And this does make sense to me. While this figure has very solid paint and modeling, it does lose quite a few points in artistry and value. We are veteran collectors, and high 60s, low 70s is very common on our scale. And while our scale is not inherently biased, the types of figures that we buy are. Typically, we only buy from companies that we can trust, have a history of high quality, or that we feel comfortable taking a risk on. We typically prefer to collect a smaller amount of higher-end scale figures rather than a larger amount of more economical price figures. I am fortunate enough to own all of the Eve figures, especially considering that I started collecting from the beginning and couldn't have known that she would blow up this much. I have put them in order of release price and rounded to the nearest 100. Skytube DX version, 18,500 yen. Pink Charm Love Call version, 19,800 yen. AniGift Handcuff version, 21,800 yen. Golden Head Usamimi Lingerie version, 24,000 yen. Pink Charm Body Harness version, 25,800 yen. And finally, Pink Charm Pink version, 26,800 yen. Now if we order based on aftermarket price, it looks a little something like this. These prices were pulled from AmiAmi with the exception of the Usamimi Lingerie version as there wasn't one, and so I took the average of all of the recently sold listings on eBay. The numbers are 25,000 yen, 32,500 yen, 37,000 yen, 37,500 yen, 40,000 yen, and 67,000 yen. Unfortunately, as you can see, all of the Rurudo figures double in the aftermarket, or in the case of the body harness version, triple. Out of the selection, my favorite is definitely the body harness version. You have a velvet base, the paint is solid, you have a metal chain, and she's cast off. Personally, my least favorite is the Love Call version, as there's a lot of fitment issues, her face is off, and there's not a lot of shading. But I will admit that the Skytube doesn't really look like Eve to me because she's very tan and doesn't have the iconic pastel purple and pink hair. But this is the first artwork that the artist published on Twitter, and so I'm just assuming that she made some design changes as the years have progressed. The handcuff version is currently more expensive than the DX and pink version, and I do think that's justified. But even though it's not by much, I don't think that the Love Call being more expensive is, because this is how I feel. This is how I would rate my collection from my least favorite to most favorite. If I lost my entire collection and I had a constrained budget, I would definitely focus on purchasing these three. I could live without these, although I might purchase them if I found a good deal. But I think that these three are really stunning, so I definitely recommend getting the handcuff version, particularly if these two are out of your price range, because I think it's more justifiable than purchasing any of these. Overall, I'm very lucky to own all of the Eve figures and to have a pre-order for all three that are currently up, as this is now a very expensive set to collect, and all the pre-orders sell out very quickly. So I'm very excited to add this figure to my collection, and I will definitely keep it away from my very naughty cats. If you're a Rurudo fan, I recommend that you pre-order figures ASAP, and I wish you guys luck obtaining a Rurudo figures that you're hunting for. Well, that's it for today's video. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe, and if you're interested in 18+ figures, you can subscribe to our new Not Safe for Work channel, Kohai's Curiosities, and hit the notification bell on both. Chances are, if we skip a video 1 week on this channel, we released an 18+ one on the other. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite Rurudo figure is. Well, until next time, senpai, bye!